the header.
There we go. It's good to go.
Okay, welcome to the Spirit of the Circle, the Indigenous Worldview and with IFS Resonance. This is brought to you lovingly by the Indigenous Elder IFS Council. And we are going to start our presentation today with a prayer from Del.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm speaking to you from Crow Country, from Sullivan country out in southeastern Montana. And I'm going to open this up. You see the picture of the Milky Way and the galaxy. I'm going to guide all the conference attendees, conference panel, and everyone else surrounding, supporting, and just listening eventually for some prayers of connection, one of the 8 C's. And I'm going to do that by guiding you through how we would in the sweat lodge that I run as a cultural practitioner. So bear with me and I'll translate as well. Aho akbadadia, anewa beitish iokudish, digyukutika, ina alayashja, bish balagusa, dish balagusa. Balakbaga titchia, babish, hulish, chlakshish, ina shigaga itchish, biagada itchish, dalakbaja. Ek, shoba, ekya shoba, huja, bila, bile, hawa, kodaja. So what I introduced myself, I thanked all of our ancestors, my ancestors in particular. I thanked them for this day, for us all to come together, listen and connect, learn about the Indigenous worldview and its resonance with IFS, the different component parts, for all the speakers, for all of you listening. I said in the first round, we thanked the 4 directions, the 4 elements, the 4 seasons, and if you're so fortunate, the 4 stages in life. And that those 4 elements being wind, water, fire, and Mother Earth. The first round, we'd purify ourselves, we'd come out for a break, we'd go back in, and this is called the round of 7. Ege, sapwa, na, ek, balasa, dalasa, itchish, yokudish, na, Ikya sapwa hiwisa ja lazwa koraja. In the realm of 7, in the second round, we thank the Big Dipper, which is what we use to pour the water on the rocks to create the steam to purify our bodies. And there's a legend that goes, but it's basically 7 buffalo brothers that decided to leave this realm, go into the stars to protect us and be available when called upon. And the third round is 10, Ekya, Pelaga, Iokudish, Ina, Biladajia, Kala, Halia. So in the round of 10, that's the 10 lunar months. And so we thank all our relatives, the ones who came before us and the ones who exist now, in the animal kingdom as well as the human family. And that those 10 lunar months are the time of a pregnancy, and for that, when spirit becomes life. And so we celebrate all versions of life, all our relatives. And then finally, the last round, Ikya Chimiswa, Iokudish. That's the picture you see on there. We call it stars with all of the prayers, all of our ancestors. Chedish, Iokudish. We ask that the wolf guide people to the other side. And as we know, it's been a difficult year. And so we send those prayers up where our ancestors are, where we all return once we've done with this human life. And then we may come back again in human form. And so we thank those who are in waiting, those who have waited, those who participated and gone back and forth to fulfill their human purpose. And so with that, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to connect in the Indigenous language. Ahogajila.
Thank you, Dale. And I now want to invite you to go to, if you can see on my screen, if you want to join our poll please use another device and go to pollev.com/MTVF. pollev.com/MTVF. Okay. And we're going to start though with watching a video. And this is from a group from the Little Wound School in South Dakota.
I just want to say hello, relatives. My name is Hawkeye Montelo. I'm the Lakota cultural mentor here at Little Wound School. And we're just honored to be a part of this gathering and would like to introduce our students.
My name is Tavian Rooks. I'm a freshman at Little Wound School.
My name is Jada Goodcrow. I'm a senior here at Little Wound.
My name is Dawson Rooks. I'm a senior at Little Wound School.
So we're honored to be a part of this gathering and we'd like to share, I guess, a huge piece of our ancestral way of life, and what kept us grounded in our ancestors was spirituality. So we just want to offer a prayer and an enjoyable weekend for all of you. Wichoni mayaku pilila washte opla toka hechegla mitaku ye oyas. Wichoni mayaku elo wichoni mayaku elo wichoni mayaku elo toka shila makia yo wichoni mayaku elo Vishwasani ke masani telo tonga shila makia yo vishwani maya koelo maya koelo vichone maya koelo vichone maya koelo tonga shila makia yo vichone maya koelo Vishwasani ke masani telo tonga shila makia yo vichone maya koelo vichone maya koelo
Our purpose today is to introduce you to the 7 B's of Indigenous inspired IFS. We also want to recognize the shamanic and Indigenous roots of the IFS unburdening process. A part of our presentation will also suggest ways that you can deepen your connection to the earth and your experience of healing in community. And finally, we will also update you about the work of the Indigenous Elder IFS Council. And I need to say that threaded throughout this presentation are artistic and poetic contributions from the student and the staff of Little Wound School in South Dakota. So we're just very excited to be collaborating with the people that have all come together to prepare this for you today. And this will be our agenda. First of all, we're going to introduce you to the 7 B's. Then we will be doing some somatic movement led by Del. Kristen will talk about deepening your practice. I'll talk briefly about the Indigenous Elder IFS Council, and then we will take Q&A, also using Poll Everywhere. So we will continue to use Poll Everywhere. And we'll finish our time today with artistic expression, poems, and a word cloud. So what I'd like to do now is give us a chance to just see the word cloud that was created by you during the drumming ceremony. So these were all the words that were contributed by you while we were in community listening to the drumming and the chanting by the students. And you can see as words get added that it's alive because community is alive. And as we just see all of these words and what everyone is contributing to this live collage, we just have a greater sense of connection with each of us, even though we are connected across the globe. Okay, and let's see, I'd like to share a poem now. And this poem comes from Helena Brings Plenty. And the poem, not all of the poem is included on the slide, but I will read the poem in its entirety. I am from where it is quiet, but loud at night, where summer days are longer and slower, and winter days were faster and short, where one sibling turned into 7, then 11, meeting close family. I am from where quiet is never quiet and loudness is always there, and to have to share a small comb to a shirt or a jacket. I am from where we yearn to have alone time, but in the end we learn it is always better to have someone around than no one. I am from where scars shouldn't define us, where we think achieving our goal is from afar and loneliness is never ending, where we can lack motivation but foresee something beyond what we are, but it gets boring and we tire from it all. With hard work and the right materials, we can go anywhere we desire I am from sleepless nights to what seems like ongoing days, wishing for April showers and sunshine rays in May. I am from a single mother with lots of love and hard work. I am from what trauma doesn't create who we are. Abuse, alcoholism, and drug use shouldn't become our one trait in life, but instead, we should pass that and become stronger. I am from where kindness is given and shouldn't be forgotten, where no matter how big or how small someone may be, treat them with love and kindness you shall receive in return. And now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Suzan McVicker.
Thank you, Julia. Hello, everyone. My name is Suzan. It's good to be together. And before I introduce the 7 B's of Indigenous Inspired IFS, let me quote Dick Schwartz about a basic IFS concept, and that's multiplicity of mind, from his 2001 book, Introduction to the Internal Family Systems Model. Here, Dick writes about how it is becoming clear that the mind as unity is a recent invention of civilized, quote, society, and that's Dick's quotes around civilized. Indigenous cultures throughout the world, Dick writes, were familiar and comfortable not only with a spirit world, but also with an inner realm inhabited by many different voices and characters. The idea of a normal mind as multiple is less a radical departure from established knowledge than it is a returning to an age-old wisdom from which established knowledge, again, Dick's quotation marks, radically departed. For a visual tie to our understandings of this age-old Indigenous worldview and Indigenous ways with IFS practice and concepts, our IFS Indigenous Elders Council wondered how to show this resonance. The number 7 was open to share 7 points of resonance, open between the 6 F's of how to do IFS and the 8 C's of self. 7 also speaks to how we talk about the story of healing the generations, 7 generations back through our ancestors and 7 generations forward through our descendants. We know in Indigenous knowledge and in IFS that when we heal our own burdens, we become a pivotal healing point where the unburdening supports those who went before us and those who are yet to come. There are the C's of self, clarity, compassion, and so on, the essential essence qualities that let us know when we are experiencing a lot of self in the room. Then we have the P's of self, presence through playfulness, and the 6 F's of getting to know apart from find apart and to befriending apart. That space for a visual of 7 points was open and ideal to show resonance with Indigenous worldview and IFS. That is how we created the 7 B's of Indigenous inspired IFS: blessing, right to be, belong, become, humble, belly laugh, embodied learning, balance, ceremony as unburdening. So an introductory word about each B, starting with blessing. Blessing can also mean prayer. Our opening prayer today was a blessing. Thank you, Del. And thank you, everyone from Bim, I have forgotten the name of your school. Wounded
Little Wound School.
Little Wound School. Thank you, Julia. Thank you from Little Wound School for your prayers and your drumming. One of the main differences between Indigenous and Western worldviews is that the Indigenous way, in the Indigenous way, there is a seamlessness of the spirit realm and material realm and the natural realm. All realms or worlds are in an interrelationship that is seamless. Blessing is resonant with the seas of self and connectedness. Through prayer and other forms that blessing can take comes awareness that all of life, all beings, all parts are connected. Right to be, belong, become is not a new stringing of these three beats together. Yet, this right needs to be stated at our place in humanity's development. This right is key to respect and how we connect with each other and all beings, and non-human beings too, who are also our relatives, including our inner relatives, our parts. A Native American grandfather spoke softly about being human and being a part of life itself. In quoting him, "You are not just alive, you are part of all life itself. You are kin to all things, and everything has life and memory." Humble. What do all parts want and need? In our IFS understanding, all parts want respect, appreciation, and understanding. All parts. In this circle, our intention is to humble ourselves, to know, understand, and appreciate each other with respect. Belly laugh. In circles across Indian country, different tribal circles, circles with different purposes, one thing I notice everywhere is humor, laughter, and often the belly laugh breaks out. Belly laugh is a resonant with one of the P's of self-playfulness. When we enjoy a belly laugh, a message is sent. A message that we are thriving despite it all. We are thriving at least in the present moment, in collective resilience, and in a funny bone felt sense in our inner world of parts and our relationships with each other. The spontaneous release of a belly laugh can even support a larger unburdening. Embodied learning. IFS is well known as a body, mind, spirit, energy way of being and healing. Body, mind, spirit, and energy are inseparable. Our Indigenous ancestors and friends now bring this knowledge back into full visibility after established civilized society has detoured from such natural integration and concepts of learning. Balance. Indigenous worldview is really all about sustainable ways of balance. When I first learned about the emphasis on harmony and balance in the Cherokee tradition, a traditional perspective from my ancestors that I am re-embracing, I felt right at home as an IFS practitioner, since harmony and balance is a stated goal of IFS practice, to bring harmony and balance to our self-leadership and our inner systems. Our ancestors knew that without balance in our ecosystems, our social systems, our kinship systems, our internal systems, any living systems, balance of power and empowerment, balance between light and dark, sun and moon, big voices and little voices, inner polarities of our parts. Without balance, we humans would not survive. Albert Einstein is quoted to have said, "The most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe," close quote. Our cumulative burdens, ancestral, historical, collective, kinship, and inner burdens can tip that balance into a life-destroying hostility. Knowing about self, the spark within all created beings, the great one, the great heart of the universe, the center with a capital C, and knowing that the pain, the burdens that were absorbed, can be transformed by source love is where Indigenous knowledge and IFS meet. Qualities, energies, medicines of that love can be restored or uncovered, and balance can be restored for the well-being of all. Ceremony as unburdening. We all have Indigenous ancestors who kept passing down ceremony because it works as a way to remind ourselves how to live, how to heal. Along with theoretical ancestry of Carl Jung and others, knowledge and practices of shamanism are carried in the IFS lineage. Practices of retrieving traumatized parts, befriending them, being present with compassionate witness are shamanic ways that are carried on in the IFS unburdening way. The difference in IFS is that the shaman is not the only one offering compassionate witness and working with the suffering beings and absorbed burdens in a person's inner system. IFS protocol is a collaboration. An IFS therapist, an IFS peer, an IFS circle co-create community with compassionate witness and transformation of wounded parts. Mi'kmaq elder Albert Marshall says that two-eyed seeing is, quote, learning to see from one eye with the strengths of Indigenous knowledges and ways of knowing, and from the other eye with the strengths of mainstream knowledges and ways of knowing, and to use both these eyes together for the benefit of all. I wish you the benefits of two-eyed seeing and the fun of belly laughs in the safety of community. Thank you. Enjoy your time in this circle with our IFS Council of Elders, embodying, speaking for, and blessing the global IFS community in sharing about the Indigenous worldview and IFS resonances.
Thank you so much, Suzan. And before we move forward, I'd like to take a look at the next poll that we have. You've heard Suzan talk about, use a lot of Indigenous words, ways of thinking, concepts. And so before we proceed and hear from more members of our council, we were just curious and wanted to know, what is your knowledge of or experience with the Indigenous worldview? Very little knowledge, somewhat knowledgeable. Have you had personal experience with an Indigenous community? And are you interested in being supportive and active in an Indigenous group or community? So again, we wanted to get a sense of all of us as a collective, and wanted to ask this poll as one way of doing that. So the bars are dancing, so I'll give them a little more minute or so to complete their dance. Okay, and we're going to hear now from a member of the Indigenous Elder Council, Charles Brower.
My name is Charles Brower. I'm the co-executive director of Intergenerational Arctic Ministries based in Alaska. Our Creator wants to bless people, and He wants to do it through each of us. We can respond to the Creator's blessings through being a blessing to others. What is a blessing? A blessing is to enrich, to convey a gift by potent utterance. To enrich, to convey a gift by potent utterance. So who is the blessing for? It is for parent to child. It is for brother to brother. is for sister to sister. It is for grandparents to grandchildren. A blessing is for everyone, individuals and groups. Faith and obedience are the conditions of blessing. Folks, this idea of blessings changes lives. I can personally testify as one who has both received and given blessings as to their everlasting empowerment. I remember my first blessing. I was first blessed as a young child by my mother. I do not believe she had much of any real theology or an understanding of blessings. She certainly was not a spiritual giant or a retainer of biblical knowledge, but she knew about the Creator and that He cares about each of us, and she loved me. With all my heart, I believe that simple, brief, informal blessing she innocently prayed upon me is what always kept a part of me going. Even in a family where the Creator was almost never mentioned, and church was just a nice option. Even in my days of wanderings, rebellion, and times finding myself, her blessings stayed with me. May we continue to be transformed and empowered through an unending shower of blessings, one unto another. May the Creator continue to bless and keep you. May He continue to make His face to shine upon you. May He turn His face towards you and keep you safe. Be blessed.
Okay, now Dale is going to speak about the next point on the star, which is the right to be, belong, become.
Thank you, Julia, everyone else, and Charles Bauer for his nice explanation of blessings that was heartfelt. And I think it's accurate, just as we started the session with a blessing for everybody part of this panel. Now, these three are really oversimplified version of human rights. And I would also contend that they're actually resonant and consistent with indigenous understanding of the world. And for example, if we were to look just at the human rights realm, many of you may know in the UN General Assembly in the post-World War II era, they adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And there's a long list of those rights that many delegates of nation states came, and then also NGOs and other organizations, and they came to formulate what was, really a summary of a declaration of those rights. And I'll just give you a few examples of like the right to be. The right to be involves the right to life, to live in freedom and safety. The right to be would include the right to be treated equally by the law, be seen to have co-equal rights as everyone else. The right to be would be the right to practice and observe all aspects of your own religion or beliefs. And of course, that's a very important one. And for indigenous peoples, for many of you who don't know, that very right was outlawed by the United States for some 75 years. So a lot of the practices and ceremonies went into hiding. And now I think after 2 generations of opening up is now being shared with the world, and why we can do a spirit of the circle like this out open and free in the public without it being outlawed. And that occurred in many different places. And the right to be, on a really fundamental cultural sense, is there's a saying, be who you are. Be who you are. And I believe it was Sitting Bull who said, it's not necessary that eagles be crows. An eagle can be an eagle, a crow can be a crow, and you can be you. It's just a fundamental understanding of who we are as a people. On the right to belong, that involves belonging to family, belonging to, in our case, in the Indigenous context, a clan. Oftentimes, many of these Indigenous communities have a belonging to an animal type of clan. Mine, for example, is more of a story and a description. Like, I'm born of my mother, just like Charles mentioned, and she's a ties the bundle clan, where we literally tie all these different sticks together. And as a family, when those sticks are tied together, we're stronger than we are individually as one. So we call that ties the bundle clan. And that's who I am a member of. And there are other things, belonging to country, and I would say in the Indigenous context, belonging to place. You know, many of our animal relatives, they know a particular place. A bear hibernates in a certain mountain range. They come out in the spring, live, gather, eat, and they return back to the same place. The salmon return to spawn back to the same place. They know where they belong. We as humans also have a belonging for the place where we grew up, we're connected to, we have family, and or even in this case, to work. And so there's a right to travel between where you work and where your family is. Those are the rights to become, to belong. And finally, on the right to become, like the right to go to school, to get an education. That's how you become trained or enabled into to performing a particular duty, at least in the Western way of living. In the Indigenous context, it's the right to learn from those who've come before. You know, that wealth and knowledge, plant medicine, ceremonies are passed down to each generation so that they can become fully who they are meant to be. And again, in the UN context, you know, the becoming would be, you know, also the right to say what they think and the right to give and receive information. That's how you become knowledgeable. That's how you become wise, as you listen, you receive information. And so I think with that, we also have in those B's there of the larger 7 B's, but those 3 B's, oversimplified human rights and Indigenous ways of being. I think it's important to say we also want to be respectful of the rights of others, the community, and our other relatives. And if we live by those, then we'll have lived a life worth living. So thank you.
Thank you, Dale. And now we're going to hear from Henry Whitlow, who is on the faculty, decision science professor at Clark Atlanta University.
Hello, and good afternoon. My name is Henry Whitlow, and I am a member of the Council for IFS Indigenous group. I've been asked to speak on the Indigenous value of humility or being humble. This is not an easy topic for me because I am not normally viewed as a humble person, but I try to equate myself with humility by looking at its opposite, which is hubris and the peril that it can put you in when you're trying to provide help to other people. I became aware of my Indigenous nature by working with Charles Brower and some of the other leaders in the Nupia community in the North Slope of Alaska. And in doing so, I become aware that I am indigenous, but not indigenous to this land. And the humility of working with a strong indigenous population was very, in a word, humbling. And I can understand the value of humility by looking at the power that I see in the people who are in the leadership in the North Slope. They are very precise. They are very focused, but at the same time, humble enough to ask questions, humble enough to put the needs of others above their own. And so my lessons of humility have been profound. And it's very difficult to help yourself or any others if you are immersed in hubris. And that lesson was brought home to me when my recent trip to West Africa, and I began to understand that while in West Africa, I was actually at home. And now I knew what it meant to be indigenous, really, because I could see people like me who were free from the overt oppression of another culture. You could still see remnants of it through colonialism and the impact on the way they're structured. But the day-to-day lives of people was free. And that was a very humbling experience, but a very empowering experience. I was home, and the thinking that I had been doing for all my life, thinking that I was from Oklahoma or from North Carolina or from New York. No, I am from West Africa. And that knowledge brought more intensity to my desire to bring IFS to the indigenous communities of Africa, in America, and of Africa, in Africa. And that has fueled my desire to really, really understand IFS, its application, and how it can be used to really improve the lives of indigenous peoples here and around the world. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to go to our next point on the star, which is belly laugh. And we had quite a few of them, by the way, doing this. And Suzan, I think you were going to make a couple comments before we go to our 2-question poll. Is that right?
Oh, yes, we spent as much time putting together what we wanted.
I'm a settler on the
hang on one
Tapu River
second.
Tlingit territory in what is now called Northern.
Sorry about that. I guess we needed a laugh. Should I just go to the poll? Should I go to the poll?
Yeah, I think this is just what we needed, really, is a good laughing at ourselves moment before we go to the belly laugh poll. But we did have a great time putting this poll together and hope that you enjoy it too.
Okay, let's see. Who or what makes you belly laugh is the question. And let me activate it. There. Who or what makes you belly laugh? You see my child, spouse, family, my partner, irony, yeah. My cats. Love those cat videos. Silliness, myself, surprises, my dog, son, Children. They are so good at belly laughing. Friends, my kitten. Dogs. Okay, so are we ready for the next question? Okay, my partner, children and partner, people I love the most. Okay, here's our next question. How many times have you peed your pants while belly laughing? Even a little bit counts. Never, once, a little, a couple of times, too many to count. It depends. So. Now, part of what you're noticing is we get to laugh together. You can hear us laugh, but if we were in a big room, that sense of community among all of us laughing over it and beginning to share stories with the person next to you about the last time it happened, that's what you get from the in-person. But we have to believe that you probably were quite surprised at this question and that hopefully it brought you a couple of belly laughs. So would you like to add anything else, Suzan, to this?
That's good. Thank you, Julia.
Okay. And now we're going to hear Kristen is going to talk about embodied learning.
Thanks, Julia. Hi, I'm Kristin Burge. I'm an IFS practitioner located on the historical homeland of the Crow Apsallika people in the state of Montana. I've been asked to speak on embodied learning in the context of this presentation. And I wanted to start with sharing a name given to me by my mother-in-law's sister, which is Akandile, and it means walks on the other side. And to me, this really sort of encapsulated this idea of embodied learning. I was raised in a Western school system, really using my head, those manager parts that work really hard to organize and study, using my intellect. But learning doesn't involve our heads, thoughts, and ideas. It's also about our lived experience in our bodies and in our spirit. And one of the biggest learnings that I've had since joining the IFS community and being trained in IFS is that my deepest learning has actually occurred in an embodied state, when it involves my body, my spirit, and my mind. And the IFS model itself, I think, is really resonant with this Indigenous worldview. We have a model and structure, the P's, the C's, the F's, and all that we were going through earlier, but it's also a very experiential, intuitive, embodied experience of healing. And that's incredibly powerful. And to me, that profound aspect of IFS is what's just drawn me into it and made it a major piece of my life's work. Another thing I wanted to touch on with respect to embodied learning is the idea of teaching by example. And this is something I think that I go back to my level 1 training, as well as working with Indigenous communities like I've done for most of my career, is that, it's not this top-down model of an expert, quote unquote, teaching someone, or a teacher-student model, but very collaborative, teaching as a respected ally, working together, learning from each other. And as part of our presentation today, with the circle, it's very representative of this model of embodied learning, a circle where we all learn and teach each other as opposed to a top-down hierarchy. It's experiential and collaborative, where you get support and you're allies with each other, as opposed to one person knowing everything and everyone else learning. It's also very nonlinear. You know, we kind of, as we know in the model, you know, we can be moving along and then we may switch to a different part that needs our attention at that time. So Indigenous worldview, I think, is very resonant with this. And then lastly, that the teaching modality or the way we approach it is determined by the learner's needs, as opposed to a fixed structure that has to be followed in exactly the same way. Another aspect of embodied learning I'll touch on briefly is that it's expanding from our individual experience, our particular developmental traumas and histories, to our ancestors, to our descendants, to other beings and spirits, and that healing can happen in a variety of ways. It can involve things that, you know, may not be of this world. It can involve our ancestors, and that healing can happen in the context of community, our tribe, in group, and we can learn from those who came before us, our ancestors, as well as from our children. And that it's not a set, static type of formula. And I think that's something that IFS embraces as well. We have the model, which is wonderful. It's a wonderful structure. And there's so much flexibility and give and take and flow within that makes it so beautiful. And we've seen, you know, folks have taken IFS into so many different areas, and somatic IFS and, you know, polyvagal theory and sexuality and all these different workshops that are available here, and in the context of an Indigenous worldview as well. Words and, you know, are sacred in an Indigenous worldview. And one of the things that I wanted to lastly touch on really quick is that, you know, there's so much that IFS can offer, and there's so much that an Indigenous worldview can offer to IFS. And it's this interrelationship that we found just profound, that we wanted to share with you all, and hope that it's helpful on each of your own collective healing journeys. And just to end really quick, I wanted to share something that Bob Falconer said in this work with the Indigenous IFS Elders Council that I thought kind of summed this up. And he shared, "We are part of something much more vast than we know with our mind or we can even imagine. Wonder, awe, and respect of these things are necessary for real healing. And this is part of widening the IFS lens." Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kristen. Now we're going to hear from Anna Garchuk, who will talk to us about balance.
Hi, my name is Anna Garchuk, and I'm an IFS therapist providing services to my community in Northern Ontario, including our Indigenous community. I want to give a special thanks to Robert Falconer for his dedicated mentorship over the past year and a half, and also for leading me to the fine people of the Indigenous IFS Elder Council. So big thank you to Bob and to the council. It's been an honor to be with you all. So I wanted to just acknowledge that I'm speaking to you today from the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe peoples of the Batchewana and Garden River First Nations on Robinson Huron Treaty Territory. This is also known by Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and it's where my ancestors settled about, I think it was about 6 generations ago or so. So I identify as an aspiring ally of Southern Irish, Scottish, and Finnish descent. And I want to just acknowledge the privileges I have benefited from because of this lineage. Okay. So I also just want to acknowledge the fact that I'm speaking to you just down the road from a former residential school that's now been reclaimed by its survivors, who've worked tirelessly over the past 40 years to bring the grounds back to the original vision proposed by Chief Shinwalk of 1831. So as the story goes, Chief Shinwalk could see that his Anishinaabe peoples were in a perilous position. Colonialism was not going away. So he proposed the idea of a teaching wigwam, where settler peoples and Anishinaabe peoples could join together to share and learn from each other. lands, traditional lands, were offered in the name of this vision, which was ultimately betrayed by the white supremacist policies laid out in the Canadian Indian Act, which was began to be enforced by 1876 or so. At that time, they set up mandatory residential schools, and children were forcibly removed from their families and thrown into these schools. The idea was to assimilate them. And they even used, policies even stated to kill the Indian in the child. They were brutally violent institutions run by state and church. And many of these children never made it home. And their remains are resting in unmarked graves across this land. So here in Canada, this is an incredibly important moment. As you know, the nation is slowly beginning to wake up from what some call a colonial coma, as we look at the 94 calls to action laid out in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's final report. And part of this process appeals to the hearts of settlers to bear witness to the long exile realities of this dark past, this dark colonial past. So research with ground penetrating radar teams has been unfolding across Turtle Island. Other methods are being used as well. And so the remains of children are being found. Let's remember there were over 500 of these residential and boarding schools in Canada and the US. So as the bodies of these children are located and identified, their spirits are rising. They're rising from exile, and this is making this time a sacred moment to bear witness. And so that's why I really do hope that you can join us on Saturday, where I will be joined by my esteemed colleagues, Shireen SaintSeer and Del Lavager. Saturday, October 16th at 2:30 p.m. And we're going to be honoring the children through ceremony, through teachings, and sharings on what healing and also self-led allyship in the spirit of authentic reconciliation might look like, as we all envision a path towards restoring wholeness through collective transformation. Thank you.
And we're now going to hear from Shireen, who will talk about her work, and it will be Shireen and Anna who will be presenting, and with Del on Saturday.
Hello, my name is Shireen SaintSeer. I am a settler on the Taku River Tlingit territory in what is now called Northern Canada. I do have Indigenous heritage, but I do not have First Nation status. I hold a master's degree in counseling psychology, and the emphasis is in Indigenous practices of healing. I have mostly turned away from modern psychology in my own healing practice until I encountered IFS, where I saw many parallels and overlaps between the IFS model and the things I had already been doing. I don't think I'll have time to talk about all of those today, but it's important to talk about the Indigenous worldview, which grows out of the earth, which is profoundly communal, and which is deeply spiritual, in which everything in the world of form and everything in the spirit realm that we don't see on a regular daily basis is alive and is real. And I think that fact is one of the reasons that IFS is actually so compatible with Indigenous practices of healing. One practice I'd like to talk about is the shamanic drumming journey, where you travel to either the upper, lower, or the lower world. I noticed that there was already parts work happening through that practice, that the shamanic practice of drumming journey offered an opportunity to put wounded parts in sacred and safe spaces within the spirit realm. It offered an opportunity to do unburdening in a sacred and safe way. It offered an opportunity to retrieve wounded and lost child parts that had been in hiding through the soul retrieval process. And it is so phenomenal that our ancestors have been engaging in these practices for thousands of years. And now we're tying these practices into the specific trauma piece that the IFS model offers. Besides shamanic drumming journey, I'm also convinced that ceremony is the best way to handle the unburdening process, whether it's a small ceremony or whether it's a big ceremony, a life-changing ceremony such as Vision Quest. When you do ceremony, you pray, you smudge, you cast a sacred space where you're held up by your ancestors and the spirits of your land, and you're protected by your spiritual family, and you go through whatever steps you have deemed appropriate to do the unburdening process. Doing it in this way, particularly if you have the opportunity for that to be land-based, is very, very, very different from sitting in a counselor's office. And in a world where the Western medicalized model has flatly failed Indigenous people, it is so important that we identify these culturally appropriate ways to offer healing for the intergenerational trauma caused by colonization, and to offer ways that are both spiritually and psychologically safe for Indigenous people.
Okay. And thank you to Shireen, Anna, everybody, the different members of the council who all contributed their thoughts to flesh out, describe, and bring to life the 7 B's of Indigenous inspired
Thank you,
IFS.
Charles, Dill,
hang
for
on.
your prayers. Blessings.
Sorry.
Thank you.
that near self part just keeps popping up.
I know. That's Susan again. And okay, now we're going to do a shout out here to Antonio Hernandez and Hanwin Moon, which is his horse from Little Wound School. And this is our way of introducing the topic of a somatic activity, which is very much, we've already mentioned this several times, but being in your body and doing something to honor your body and move it along. And again, I'm not going to say any more because that's what Dell's going to do. So I will turn the slide to the next one and take it away, Dell.
Thank you, Julia. I just got another belly laugh, by the way, because I think Suzan's self-like part made an appearance through video to complement the actual live person. So we know the self-like part is alive and functioning. Looking into the somatic activity, what you have here on the screen is a tool developed by a group of SE practitioners, SE being somatic experiencing, was derived from the life's work of Peter Levine in a book called Waking the Tiger. And there's been a lot of permutations on that. And I happen to be a provisional SEP practitioner. I've also been involved in just joined the group, which is a part of SE, and it's called Crisis Stabilization and Safety. And this is the aid that a group of practitioners came together to create so that they made this available for people during the pandemic as they became more isolated and couldn't go see a practitioner in person, or that when there were these natural disasters occurring, such as Hurricane Ida in the US, for example, these were basic tools utilized in order to reconnect with the body, especially during large and small events that are very disruptive. So the letters of it are scope, and each of these parts really resonates with the 6 F's, define, focus, and flesh out, which is what we'll do a little bit of. And it's just a small sample. And by the way, this chart is on the traumahealing.org, and there's a link on it if you go look at it yourself, and you could print it off. And utilize it for yourself or clients. And I found it to be a very useful just tool, and had it laminated and just have it with me at all times. So have a good reminder. And on the website, there are actually little short videos on how to practice these. So with that, one other thing I'll say before we get into the activity is that there's a whole other area of somatic IFS, and I believe Suzan McConnell, not only her wonderful book that I've listened to, but she also has special retreats in this context, and I think she's later on in the conference on Saturday. And she's, has led the way in somatic IFS. So this is just one part of acknowledging that. So first, why don't we do the C together, which is connect. And what I'd like you to do is put one foot over the other. It doesn't matter, whatever you're most comfortable with, your right over your left or your left over your right. And then we're gonna also, you see the hands here, go under the armpit for each side. You're gonna have that. And then we're gonna lean our head down and just take some deep breaths. This is a way of connecting with our body, fully connecting. So go ahead and put your head down and take some deep breaths. Was that a spirit talking? I think that might have been a spirit talking. Please reveal your name. And I won't go into the the science basis of this, but it's something that's used, for example, many of you may remember, like when you're a kid and you're cold or there's something that's windy outside, you kind of just hold yourself, you tuck your head in, and that's how you generate heat and warm up and reconnect. It's parallel to that. And so that's one form of connection, for example, and they teach this in the post disaster relief where people are deployed on site. Next, why don't we invite you all to stand for a moment. We've been sitting for more than an hour, so I think there's some science behind that too about standing at least every hour to get up. And this is the first part where we're going to slow down. I might be missing a head, so another spirit there. Don't worry about that. Just listen to the voice. And what we're going to do is just walk in place very slowly and shift your weight side to side. Right foot to the left foot. Right foot to your left foot. And as we become stationary, feel all around in your feet. And by that, like maybe lean back into your heels and then to your toes, leaning forward a little. And then let's go to the outside of your feet and then the inside of your feet. And as we're slowing down and noticing what's happening within us, the somatic IFS, you look to see what parts might be speaking to you. Maybe your knees are a little achy or your hips are tight. Maybe your lower back is a little sore from sitting. And we're going to just go ahead and orient right now, which is the O. So take a look around your room or office and just slowly move your head and just notice what's in the room behind you or in front of you. This is orienting because when people experience, minor small t trauma or large t, they have a tendency to fixate with their pupils and get stuck. So we ask them to look around, to change their gaze, and to orient into their surroundings, to get out of the replay of that trauma, small trauma or large. And then now with pendulate, as you briefly, let's just focus on one spot. Let's say that your body, your knee is aching from sitting. So we'll just say, focus on one of the knees. Now, where do you find somewhere else in your body that feels more open, not as constricted? Let's say it's in the belly area or the chest or maybe even your arms. Now go between that knee, which we'll say felt a little achy, and then the other part that doesn't feel that same sensation. You go to the knee, to the other part of your body. Knee, other part. And just notice what happens inside you, your inner physiology. Oftentimes it'll open up space around that part of the body that is trying to talk to you. Maybe even it's connected to a part. Maybe it's a manager. Maybe it's a firefighter. Maybe you have exiles in that area. And again, I welcome you to read Suzan McConnell's work that goes into a lot of different things that happen when the body embodies a part and how you work with that. And finally, the end of scope here is the engage. So in this case, as many of you know, during the pandemic, engagement has been largely curtailed, if not completely lost for some people during lockdown. And we know as social beings, we need connection. So just invite you to engage, whether it's on the inner world, close family and friends, work colleagues, and just engage, because that has a way of opening up, anything that's being held in the body. So with that, that was just a very brief introduction to scope. And I welcome you to utilize that for yourself, your clients, family, friends. And thank you for your time and attention to that. So we'll return to our seating to finish the program.
Thank you, Del. Gosh, my body feels so different now. And we're going to hear from Kristen now, who is just going to share with us some ideas about deepening your practice.
Thank you, Julia. So here are some ideas, and of course this is not an exhaustive list, of deepening your practice with respect to these Indigenous Worldview IFS perspectives. And these come from the IFS Indigenous Elders Council, kind of put together a list of some of these. Like I said, it's not a comprehensive list, but things that you can do to deepen your practice. And I think as I look at these, it's also ways of expanding. So, that idea of widening the lens of IFS, this is really, about that. How do you expand your experience of IFS with an Indigenous worldview? And one of the ways of doing that is to spend time in nature, which I think is probably not foreign to a lot of us. Spending time on the earth and taking in her energy and listening to her and what she has to say and teach you. For some folks, this may involve moving your body. It may be hiking, it may be swimming, breathing in the air, just noticing what the trees feel like, the grass, and then going and doing something creative, which of course is one of the 8 C's. Could be writing and journaling or drawing or sculpting, whatever moves you in a way, with your connection to the earth. The second one is communing with the stars, doing a meditation at night, and taking in that cosmology. And there's so much actually in each of these points, and I think a lot of these practices are gone into in more detail with some of the presentations at the conference. But Indigenous worldview and cosmologies are huge, and there's a lot to say about it, but there's also things you can do just individually as you spend time with the night sky, expanding your consciousness and allowing your perspective to broaden. The third one is dealing with your ancestors and ancestral healing. And I know there are some offerings at this conference that are going to be on ancestral healing. And I actually just recently listened to an IFS Talks podcast that discussed ancestral healing. So there's a lot of various ways to do that. But working with burdens, legacy burdens that may have been passed down your line of your family and your ancestors, and working with your ancestors in ways to release these burdens. And not to forget also that this work heals not only, I think Suzan had mentioned this earlier, heals not only those who came before us in our own lifetime, but also the descendants who follow us. And so this is very, very powerful work. And then the next one, which is just as important, is having gratitude for the heirlooms and the gifts that we received from our ancestors. I know a lot of work in this area deals with, trauma and burdens and releasing burdens. And it's equally important to recognize the gifts and the heirlooms that we received, and having gratitude and expressing our gratitude for that. Part of this also is receiving allies that show up. There's so many folks who want to, help Indigenous folks and do work in Indigenous communities. And that's part of receiving those gifts that are showing up in our lifetime and building those relationships. And then the last one, which keeps coming up, it was kind of a joke at first. We were just joking about belly lap, and belly lap keeps reoccurring. So, this is actually part of connection. It's our connections with each other when we can laugh and we can be playful with each other. That, part of the work with IFS and healing is not all serious, especially in Indigenous communities. There's a lot of play, there's a lot of laughter, and there's a lot of joy. And to just appreciate that and know that it's not, it's included as part of the healing process, and that laughter is a big piece of this work as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kristen. And we have opened the poll everywhere to begin to gather any questions or comments that you'd like us to respond to. And before we did that, we wanted to give you a little more information about the Indigenous Elder IFS Council. We held our first meeting in May of 2021, but the convening of the individuals who became a part of the first group of council members, it was about a 6-month process to locate each other, begin to talk about the different ways that people were doing IFS work in Indigenous lands, what would the vision might be, is there a need, was there a calling, and did we all feel that to come together in a council? And so after numerous discussions, one-offs and who would be right, who is doing something now that is interested in both contributing and also getting support, we held our first meeting in May of 2021. Who we are elders and also IFS practitioners who are deeply immersed, a part of, contributing to Indigenous practice, as you heard from all our different council members that contributed videos to this. We also began a relationship that was really inspired by this conference with Little Wound School, because the first idea was we wanted to allow the artistic expression to come from the people, and especially call into the young people into this process and be co-collaborators with us. And so the art, the poetry that you've heard and seen are part of that. We've decided that our current project is a peer-based IFS program, and we are in conversation with the Stanford University D School, which is an interdisciplinary school at Stanford that brings design thinking to a whole array of initiatives for people that go there to get that kind of cross-discipline ideas and creativity. They have already done some work in the recovery field with an Indigenous group up in the state of Washington. And when we heard about that, we decided to meet with them and to talk to them about our vision and whether they felt that going through some of these design type activities and also having that feature representatives who are currently all across Canada, the US, all the way up to the North Slope and possibly touching into Mexico, if we could also include people in that way, virtually. And so these are the conversations that we're having to plan, because we want the deployment of this peer-based IFS-inspired program to be tribal-led. We want it to speak to the needs that are out there right now. And as you've heard from several people, especially Anna, talking about the response to what's being discovered around the boarding schools, we really want to be able to be responsive and relevant to the needs that are right in front of us right now. The future vision is to reach all Indigenous people, and Henry Whitlow is very interested in us being able to take our program also to Africa and also to other community-based projects that he already is involved with here in the US as well. Right now, we're in the process of creating and designing our website and our ways of interacting with you as a group, as a community. It's not up and running yet, but if you want to be added to that list, then we ask that you please email us at meta8c@gmail.com. In April of this year, we did start a meeting that meets once a week. That was kind of the precursor to our peer-based program, and it's called a Meta8C meeting. And it was actually inspired by a comment that Bob Falconer made on IFS Talks, the podcast, and he was talking about IFS and addiction and recovery, and he just kind of offhandedly said something like, you know, people who are in 12-step recovery have meetings to go to where they witness each other, which is very much a part of the IFS process. But people who are in IFS therapy or doing IFS work or whatever, we don't have any kind of open communal place to go where we can do the same thing, just speak for our parts and witness and thereby heal in community. And so I said, well, wow, why don't we start that? And so we started the Meta8C meeting. Our ultimate desire is to have 24/7 virtual Meta8C meetings by Zoom and have that 24/7, 365, as well as in-person meetings, again, where people can just come together, whether they're in therapy or not, whether they know IFS or not, but they can come and just feel the self energy that exists during these group shared processes where sacred space is created. So again, if you want any more information about that, please email meta8c@gmail.com. So let's see. What we are going to do now is to hear a poem. We will get to your questions. Let's see. Or should we do questions now before we do Bim's poem? Yes, we'll do that. Okay. So is Meta8C for everyone, or is it primarily an Indigenous space? No, it's for everyone. Grateful for the love and inclusivity. Where can we get more training in healing modalities? Can we go to the edit Meta8C meet if you're not Indigenous? Yes, it's open to everyone, and it's open to anyone who's even curious about IFS. So you really don't have to know IFS in order to go to the Meta8C meeting. How can we be an ally? That is being defined as we go. And we do talk about what it means to be an ally at the Meta8C meetings when we can. Let's see. Any other comments? Let's see. Oh, there's a question about, could you please reshare the information about the ceremony event regarding the lost children in the boarding schools? And that event, actually, could you get me that list that's on the refrigerator right there? Anna and Shireen will be talking more about that on Saturday. And it is, let's see. It's going to be Saturday, October 16th, 11:30 Pacific, which is also, I believe, 2:30 Eastern.
That's right.
So, yeah, 2:30 Eastern on Saturday. And I guess I'd like to ask Will or does anybody, do the moderators have any questions that came through the platform, if any also came through the platform?
Hello. Yes.
Yep.
I can help.
Okay. Do you have more questions that we need to respond to?
I think so. So first of all, Julia, Kristen, Suzan, and Belle, such a treat. Your presentation, so lively and fun. So much wisdom has been shared as well. Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation to moderate your presentation. I'm having a great time with you. And a fun task to pick on a few questions. There is just a few questions showing on this Q space. So can I go ahead and read them?
Yes.
So there is one question that says, would you please comment briefly on ways that non-Indigenous folks can integrate these ideas in a way that is respectful and non-appropriative? Do you want me to repeat the question? Was it clear?
Yeah, it can be respectful and what? What was the last word?
And non-appropriative. Non-appropriative.
Oh, okay. Doing the cultural appropriation thing.
Exactly. That's
right.
That's the idea.
Yeah.
So if you could comment on ways that a non-Indigenous folks can integrate these ideas.
Right.
Yeah, Julia, this is Del. I guess I'll go ahead and do an initial response. You know, non-Indigenous have been by and large welcomed into, at least here in various ceremonies, and I've seen them in other tribal communities too. I think the issue becomes if somebody goes and learns it and then says that they're now an official shaman and they have people pay for them to do these things for them. That would be the appropriation version. But for anyone just to participate, especially when they're invited, is usually welcome. I always think, you know, starting small and concrete is the best way. For example, if you've got, like, say, the family heirloom that came up earlier, or something that's deeply meaningful, a picture, a gift, that you put that in a special place and that you can pray in that place, say through the various plants that are out there, whether it's sage, sweetgrass, cedar, Palo Santo, you know, whatever incense, and then you start to integrate that into, say, in a morning session when you're just thankful and you thank the stars, the sun, the moon. I do that on a pretty regular basis, or at night before I go to bed, or if there's an event during the day that felt very disruptive, I'll go to that spot and then I'll ask the plants to help me through, because the plant actually increases our capacity and it opens it up when we're constricted. So when you smell the plant, you automatically open up, and that you're remembering something that's very special to you. So in that way, you're, like on the scope thing, you're pendulating between whatever's bothering you and then these other medicines that are available to you. And they may seem really small at first, but that's usually where ceremonial life starts, is really, really small. And then you just have, sometimes you could say, you could go do an offering outside, say food or tobacco, you offer that to the earth. Just these small symbolic gestures become like you can integrate into your daily life, no matter where you are, urban, rural, you know, hot, cold, it doesn't matter. You can integrate a lot of little ceremonial components.
There was question that asked, am I engaging in appropriation when we do the unburdening process? That's a part of IFS. And I believe that this is where in the Indigenous worldview and IFS are very much in alignment, because I believe when we come from self, then we hold things sacred. And we're not, you know, we're not doing it to like be cool, trendy, and hip, or, you know, like we say, hip, slick, and cool or something. We're doing it to bring healing in a very sacred and ceremonial manner, which is a consciousness. And so to me, it's like the question goes back to the person who is doing the process. And that question is, are you doing it from self, or are you doing it from a self-like part, or a part that, you know, is doing something else? And if so, when you become aware of it, again, going back to the notion of compassion, healing, find out what that's about. Maybe there's a longing to re-explore and reconnect with roots that have been lost or forgotten, and that's what all this is about. And so extending love and compassion to that part, and then getting back and asking your own self, how do I bring more sacredness into my practice? How can I bring more of the intent around all of these ceremonial practices in order to hold them the way they were designed and created and have been passed down? So.
Yeah, and Julie, I would just add that even if, you know, unburdening, as we're talking about, how many have Indigenous roots, it's not only for Indigenous people. You know, it's part of us as human beings, and it's, you know, something we share. And we're highlighting, you know, some of these shamanic Indigenous roots of the unburdening process. And as Shireen talked about, ceremony and unburdening, but it's something we can all partake in, this healing together. So it's not exclusive.
And if I could add to that as well, in a lot of the Indigenous practices, the ceremonial practices, we actually ask permission of the elements to acknowledge them, and then we do an offering. So each time we ask for that, we don't just assume it's there or that it's unique to us or we get to just do whatever we want or empower ourselves. I always make an offering and I say, is it okay? And then I access myself, and then the self leads from that point forward. And it's usually, you know, open, creative, curious, all the 8 C's.
Yeah, and waiting for that answer, waiting for the answer from the earth that responds to that question that says, is it okay if I? And then truly waiting and seeing what you receive back. One of the concepts that the council discussed is we were wanting to distill, you know, Indigenous worldview is a very broad, multifaceted, complex, and multi-layered, you know, concept. And one of the things we talked about was spaciousness, making space for, and it was an S and not a B word, and it is woven into many of the others. But the thing that I would also say is that spaciousness is such a part of the practice. Being able to wait, being able to ask a question and wait for a response, being able to see what emerges, what comes from this broader self energy that extends that and that transcends our own self energy. To me, that's also a part of it. So
that was a great question that someone asked about appropriation, that just shows a lot of caring and wisdom and good connection right there, just to ask the question.
Yeah. So I'd like to go ahead, if we could, and share the poem that Bim wrote. And I'll need to share my screen again.
My name is Warren Pimpuyer. I work at Little Moon School, and I'm part of the IFS Elders Council. And I'd like to share a poem that I wrote that to me relates to the IFS model and the different parts. It's the parts that were developed as I grew and how I came to finding my center, or in IFS they call it my true self. It's titled In Search of the Lost Warrior. I searched for the warrior as a child, a spirit innocent and free, but broken by people's reaction to me. You're too small, the last one picked when we played ball. How come you're always in the way? Don't do what I do, just what I say. Never say how you feel. Do anything but be real. The way of the church you have to learn, or in hell you're going to burn. It's too bad your dad had to die. Be a man and don't you cry. Fit into society, they would scream, but in my heart beat a different dream. Outside voices conditioned me to fail, but a voice inside said, a warrior spirit will prevail. I searched for the warrior as a young man, a spirit filled with pain and frustration, fueled by anger and intoxication. I finally believed what they said. The dream inside was almost dead. Society had finally won. I became the prodigal son. With no dream, I lost my sight. All I wanted to do was get high and fight. Drugs and alcohol became my way of life. It's the only way I could cope with the pain and strife. In relationships, I could not stay. I would always run away. In my soul, I wanted to die. I no longer had the will to try. Then God gave me a sign. It helped me quit the drugs and wine. My thoughts have become my jail, but a warrior spirit said, you will prevail. I searched for the warrior as a man, a spirit scarred but free, made by my reaction to me. With the pipe, I learned to pray, the spirits guiding me along my way. In the ceremonies, I began to heal. I slowly began to see what was real. To grow, I needed all the pain, just like the grass needs the rain. Now when people try to use their power and control, I just stop and pray for their soul. And when in my life love begins to fade, I just remember that soulmates just don't happen, they are made. Not believing in myself was my only sin. That's all I have to do to win. I now live my life by choice, and that's to listen to the warrior's voice. I no longer believe in the end of the trail, because if you find your warrior spirit, you will prevail. Thank you.
So, and now Kristen is going to read a poem, and we want to do a shout out to Dale Kerfman.
Thanks, Julia. Here's the poem. Maybe you're not a language keeper, but you know the songs. Maybe you're not a basket weaver, but you know the roots. Maybe you don't keep the medicine, but you keep the children. Maybe you're not a dancer, but you know how to make regalia. Maybe you don't keep a lodge, but you keep the fire. We don't have to be all of the things to be Indigenous, to be worthy, to be valued, to belong. We had societies and our roles were specific to our gifts. Quit exhausting your spirit trying to be gifted at everything. It doesn't make you more traditional. Slow down and honor your gifts and culture. You may find out it can lead you back to where you want to be. From an honored elder in Canada.
And now we're going to go back to Poll Everywhere. Whoops. We're back to pee in our pants. Let's see. What are your parts and self calling you to do in response to this presentation? And you can respond as many times as you'd like. Connect, write a poem, learn, 7 B's, honor my journey, slow down. My parts say to honor my soul, learn, do ceremony, engage, go into ceremony, embrace, listen, love more, to reach out to nature, honor spirit, ally, get to nature in my new home, create, check out Meta 8C. An ally. Pay attention inward. Reflect. Go for a hike. Take up ceremony again in person and in circle. Be more at peace. Ground to the earth. Open my heart. Make offerings. Practice gratitude. Create my own sacred space. Be outdoors in nature. Follow my heart. Ancestor and earth connection practice. Create art. Sit with the knowledge and then seek out more ways to learn. Slow down and connect with myself. Learn more. Experience more. Play, create, and laugh. To include more nature in my work with my parts. Connect more to the earth and the stars. Slow down and honor this space. Volunteer at a local reservation. Make music, get more involved. Go outside in bare feet. Learn more about the council and its work. Honor my own Indigenous roots. Find a flower and find a flow.
Yeah.
It could be a flow or a flower. Host communal IFS spaces. Okay, and I have parts that say I've been reading for a long time. So would some of my colleagues like to take on the reading?
Slow down, connect, reevaluate, be still, integrate somatic experiencing, slow down, connect with the earth and the sky, slow down with clients, ask for more permission, spend time with earth. Just go with it, let go of invisible strings, connect, pay attention to the earth, reconnect to the earth and myself. 7 B's. Connect to my heritage. To connect more with the earth, elements, to invite clients to do the same. Remember to ask permission from the elements before unburdening. Talk to a tree. Become more conscious about my own Indigenous Cherokee heritage. Connect with nature. Stay humble. Heal with my family. Learn the history of the land I'm on. Take time. Dance, sing and laugh. Healing. Yes, slow down. Breathe with. Integrate my spiritual path. Join Meta 8C. Spend time with the earth. Make altar order ancestors. Believe in me. Be patient. Join the IFS Indigenous Elders IFS group. Give thanks. Become open to part of me longing for place and connection to land. Acceptance. Find small rituals to connect with nature. List heirlooms. Include more ceremonial gestures in my day. Be respectful. Laugh. Incorporate ceremony into unburnings. Connect. Continue to heal. Honor the gifts of the land. Reach out. Reflect more, observe more, learn more. Learn. Learn. Connect. Be still. Walk barefoot on the earth. Remember 7 B's. Be present. Respect. Connect. Honor my gifts. Continue to open up to all the rich voices. Pray more. Honor. This presentation has really triggered the parts of me that feel she doesn't belong. Get more in touch with my ancestors. Unburdenings on the land. Community. Be in nature. Be centered in what I am good at and not strive to be good at everything. Ask consent from the universe to do ceremony. Remember the sacred in every moment. Create small ceremonies by asking permission. Ask permission and wait. Remember connectedness. Practice simple ritual. Stop, breathe, listen. Kristen, do you have your microphone on? Embody. Commune more with nature. Would you like to read? Cultivate deep relationships with plants. Nature.
Kristen, why don't, if you guys want to take a couple minutes and then we can go to the final
Connect.
word. Or are we ready to go to the word cloud now?
Pray with the stars. Be bold. These are so wonderful. I'm just enjoying listening around the circle. Hold all in the sacred. Belly laugh more. Make inventory of gifts from ancestors. Honor ancestors. Belly laugh with my grandchildren. I would like to learn some of the ways of the circle. Listen. Breathe deeply. Move toward a deeper spirituality and connect with those who practice such sacred ceremony. Continue to embody learning. Connect. Slow down. Pay attention to the ancestors. More of all named. Begin. Celebrate the belly laughs. Belly laugh in all caps. Breathe. Seek out the wisdom of elders. More daily ceremony. Connect and learn with more curiously. Belly laugh. Get another pair of glasses for two-eyed seeing. Maybe that's what happened to me. Honor who I am. Trust the deeper flow of life. Connect with Meta 8C. Create ceremony in my life. Embrace ceremony. Connect with those developing a pet model. I've been teaching BIPOC women to support each other using IFS tools. Teach as a respected ally. Some folks are answering in the chat.
Okay. Why don't we, should we go ahead and go to the chat now? But meanwhile, I think I will go to the final word cloud.
So, Julie, do you want me to read some more questions?
Sure.
Okay, so there is one here maybe interesting where someone asking, where might we learn more about ceremonies for our own healing and for healing in our communities?
How would you answer that? I know that there's a group here in my community in California. I'm in the Bay Area of California, and in the Santa Cruz Mountains, there's a group called Timeless Earth Wisdom, and they, in a very, very sacred way, help teach people about ceremony, will help create ceremony, and it's really, that's where I've learned it. But I guess I would probably ask Dell and Kristen and Suzan if you would also answer that.
So I think the question, what I heard was how to learn about or practice ceremony for self and for groups. You know, we live in one amazing age of technology where so many things are available now. I think the hardest part is actually discerning, you know, what is authentic and genuine and how to then incorporate that. You know, on the ground, we have in this Indigenous community, there are many different kinds of practices. And I've also learned online too, not necessarily the Indigenous piece, but you know, all these master classes, webinars, podcasts, you can learn quite a bit about all of that. And there are people who are really known for it, maybe as intellectuals. Then there's folks who actually are practitioners of those ceremonies. And I would just look up there and see what resonates with you and then learn about that. But, you know, it is the small things, I think, that where people generally can start on their own. And then you get ideas and find out, like, say, different types of water ceremonies. There will be people who put it in a glass bowl or crystal bowl, and then they'll pray into it, and then they'll pour the water on the ground they want to bless, or they'll pour it into the river or in the ocean so that the prayers go all around. There'll be others that go to trees and spend time by a tree and see and you often feel a grounding, and there are meditations around those types of things to say, you know, imagine your roots going down in the ground like a tree, or that, you know, you go up as high as the redwoods and imagine life like that. There are other ceremonies around particular types of animals, you know, because they have a gift that they contribute. You know, a variety of different ones. And in the Northwest, you'll see a lot of salmon ceremonies. In the Midwest, you'll see, you know, the indigenous species for that of their fish take, the walleye. Then you'll see ocean-bearing people around whales and dolphins and the like. And then in the plains, we have horse ceremonies. There's buffalo ceremonies. I mean, there actually is a ceremony for many, many different things. So I would just look up online and find out if you can find, and even YouTube for that matter. I haven't done too much of the YouTube, but I'm told that there is quite a bit there. I know there's a lot of singing and songs, and those can be also helpful to create your own ceremony as well.
Thank you, Kristen. Bill, sorry. There is one more that I believe would be interesting. Someone asks, could you speak more to the spiritual component of IFS, specifically spirit guides, the use of the client's spirituality to open space for more self-energy, or the role of the body in indigenous people's spirituality?
What should I? So what I heard was guides, spirit guides, spirituality, and maybe Suzan can talk to the IFS model. I'll just speak to guides in general. So when you are humble and you express your love and gratitude to a particular place or area, and that you meditate or pray to that, at least the way that I was taught from this region of the country is that animals will come to that particular person or family, and they're known to have a connection. And so that connection, as you notice and become aware, they could end up being a guide. Now, a guide could also be an ancestor or leader of a people. They can be any kind of, higher power imagery. I know people have talked about the different religious denominations and having them be a guide. Your relatives could be a guide. There could be animal guides. There could just be other types of entities out there that, as long as you frame it as being in your highest and best interest and an invitation for only your highest and best, then things can show up if you're patient and you pause and you show humility. And then things, and it could be a sound, it could be, all the different types of senses could connect. And it's just important to be open and available.
And I just want to add a couple words real quick. There are resources out there. I know Bob Falconer has done some workshops and maybe some podcasts on, the difference between unattached burdens and guides who really do have your best interests, and so the highest and best. And it is it's very, there's a lot that can be said on that, and I don't have that much information, but I feel like I have experienced a guide in my own personal sessions, and it's just very loving energy. But I'm, it's just being open, I think, to what the client, what their frame of reference and their spirituality is, but having an idea of what that might be and what may be coming in, so you could hold space in a way that's safe and loving and respectful. So that's all I wanted to add.
Well, thank you both, Kristen and Del, and for the person who asked the question. And I'd like to come back to that, what we were talking about in the former question about how to learn. And we've talked about prayer, so ask and put your intention out there. And then listen, just like Del was talking about, in a place of nature. And also in the IFS way, go inside and listen inside. I have guides and work with my guides, and there's we say about a lot that happens in the inner world, you can't make this stuff up, that it just unfolds, and we see it, we hear it, and sometimes we resist it. It's like, oh my God, what's this? And sometimes when we really get receptive and we get quiet, this is when our guides have the opportunity to come in to that spaciousness created by self, whether it's spaciousness created in our inner realm, in what we're seeing in the outer world. Because remember, those are seamless. These are seamless, connected, interrelated ways of experiencing life. So the other thing gets to what Kristen was talking about, learning earlier and learning together. That, you know, start with one other person, find a buddy, or ask your IFS therapist, or, you know, about guides, or and just start comparing notes and learning. So yeah, great question that could go on for another whole workshop. Thank you.
Well, our time has come to an end. I want to thank you all for joining us. And I just want to say that the word cloud and the polling has really helped me have a sense of everyone that was here together sharing this experience. So I want to thank you for just the thoughts, the ideas, and the energies that you're bringing to the world. And again, thank you. Our time is up, and we hope to see you at the conference and at some future point on the planet. So thank you. I'm not sure.